Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India. Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. Welcome to the third session of Introduction to Human Resource Management course. Today we are going to look at a very important process of the human resource management function, that is recruitment and selection. Before we understand the recruitment and selection, I would like you all to think about and recall what we discussed in the last session. In the last session we discussed about job analysis, job description, and to understand the recruitment process, we must recognize that between the job analysis or job description and recruitment comes a very important organization design related process, that is called employment grading. This process is about clubbing some of the jobs in a particular band. So, organizations, depending on how many hierarchical levels and what is their preference for the hierarchical levels, can have different bands, 5 bands, 7 bands, 9 bands, that also depends on the size of the organization. But after the job analysis, the next logical step is, in a reasonably medium or big size organization, is to club the related jobs which are similar in terms of the competency requirement. So, for example, a job of fitter, driver, welder can be clubbed into one band, job of sales head, operations head, marketing head can be clubbed into another band. So, in terms of the relative complexity and criticality of the job, they are clubbed into specific bands, so that organization can take recruitment related or compensation related decisions according to the band, which will be naturally very less in numbers, 5, 7, 8, 9, etc., rather than taking the compensation related decisions looking at large number of jobs about which the job analysis is being created. So, coming to the recruitment process, this is the complete recruitment process. This starts with the notification or advertisement of the vacancy till employee evaluation and promotion. In between, what happens? After the advertisement, applicants are attracted, a pool of candidate is created, shortlisted candidates are identified from the bigger pool of the candidate, then the selection and hiring process takes place. After employees come into the organization, they require socialization and training and development. They also go through different cycles of performance evaluation, and based on the performance evaluation, promotions take place. We must recognize that in each step of recruitment process, there is some risk involved. For example, we may end up publishing our advertisement in a magazine or in an outlet which is not visited by prospective candidates for that particular vacancy. For example, if I am looking for an expert in hydrology, we must recognize that expert, highly very highly technically competent expert in hydrology for example, we may not get those kind of candidate by publishing a job advertisement in the large newspaper. Probably a trade related magazine or an outlet where the special or a particular journal, research based or practice oriented journal, which is widely referred by the community of the hydrologists. If we publish that advertisement there, naturally we will be able to attract better candidates, we will be able to attract more number of more suitable candidates for the position. We may position our advertisement at the appropriate outlet, but the communication about that advertisement, the communication about the job notification may not be the one which result into getting prospective hires attracted to my organization. We must recognize what we communicate has an impact and that creates an impression in the minds of prospective candidates. So, that communication has to be designed very consciously, very carefully, which presents the appropriate picture of the job and a good picture of the organization. We may have good notification outlet, we may communicate the right information or our communication about the job and the organization might be appropriate, but if the selection and hiring process are not appropriate, we may end up hiring suboptimal candidate, meaning the candidate which are not best suitable amongst the available lot. We will be discussing more about the selection and hiring in this session. We may also have good hire along with our ability to communicate the positive image of the organization, and we may put this advertisement at the appropriate outlet. As a result of that, we may get new hire, a good hire, but all the hire require at least two very important inputs. What are those? In the beginning of the job, socialization, how the socialization happens of that employee, meaning how that person becomes the part of the social system of the organization. That is a great determinant of induction and the efficiency or effectiveness of the induction of that organization, as that determines the efficiency of the induction of that employee in the organization. For example, if organization has the culture of innovation and if in the socialization process this value is not communicated and some other value like cost efficiency or process orientation is somehow gets communicated, this will not be a effective socialization and person may feel confused when she starts working in the organization after the formal socialization process. Socialization process is extremely crucial to inculcate certain type of culture in the organization. To put differently, we can also say that if we wish to create certain type of culture, socialization stage is the most crucial stage where those kind of cultural values can be communicated and inculcated in the employees. We need to recognize that organizations are not only technical systems, organizations have are financial systems, are economic systems, but they are also social systems. If in a combined way, if we call technical system to that aspect of the organization which deals with the transaction, which deals with the exchange of information, formal authority, roles, resource allocation, we also need to recognize that organizations also have informal system which may not be reflected in the organization design papers, which may not be reflected in organizational documents, but it is always there, that is in the form of social relations, how one person is comfortable with another, how some people make a clique, how some people have likings and affiliation based on the preference of their career or the region they come from or the language they speak. So, based on so many sociographic factors, each organization also has a social system. Person will not be able to get integrated in the social system if socialization program or induction program is not designed well, and then comes the training and development part. A large number of people in organization, we discussed in the talent management session as well, that they are willing to perform, but they are not skilled enough to perform their best. That makes 60% of the new recruits in any organization. So, training is a very important input for employees, new or old employees, to perform up to their level of the competency and perform according to the level of their motivation to perform. So, training, behavioral training as well as the technical training, they have combined effect on the employee performance. We may advertise our recruitment notification in the good outlet, appropriate outlet, we may able to attract a healthy number of applicants, we may select or hire a optimal candidate, we can have good socialization process, training and development process, but if we do not have good performance management process and related to that promotion and avenues for further growth of the employees, a large number of employees after reaching to some level will start feeling a sense of plateau, a sense of stagnation in their career. And people who experience a stagnation in the career are low in taking initiatives, performing innovations, or taking up the stretch targets and thinking out of the box. So, this problem must be avoided if there is if organization wants to constantly grow and perform well at the marketplace. And for that, the organizations have to make good career plan for their employees. In the next session, we are going to look at career plan as well, which is an important part of the overall recruitment or HR process, and then comes the promotion. If employee after when the organization successfully takes the previous steps, we have good number of people ready for promotion and have a good pool of the candidates for the promotion. A sign of a healthy recruitment process in organization is that when organization has a healthy pool of people who are ready at any point of time to take next level of bigger or higher responsibility. So, if we look at the recruitment and selection process, it starts with preparation of the selection, move to conducting assessments using various techniques, and then dealing with unsuccessful candidates or applicants and recruiting the most effective candidates and designing orientation process for them. This makes one recruitment cycle. You might remember that while discussing with the job analysis, we talked about different kind of information required to be included in the job analysis document, and those those pieces of information are information about the work activity, the human behavior required in that particular role, which kind of machines, tools, equipments are to be used by incumbent of that job, what will be the performance standards, what is the context of the job, in what condition the person will have to perform the job, and human requirements, meaning to what extent how the person, how as a person he should be prepared, what all is required for him to or her to keep ready to perform well in that particular job. All that information is useful, has to be used in the recruitment process. Before we discuss recruitment and selection process in more detail, I would like to remind you, which probably I have reminded you in all the sessions, that this HR activity also needs to be aligned with the strategic orientation, strategic focus of the organization. The process of deciding what position the firm will have to fill and how to fill is the recruitment strategy. This focus is determined by looking at a particular position and thinking whether that is required in the organization, whether we need new replacement of a person in that position, or we can club that with existing position, or we need to redefine that position. Succession planning is also very important for a strategic success of the organization. What is the meaning of succession planning? Succession planning simply means a readiness of the employees to take up the next promotion or next level of responsibility. In other words, for each critical job or each critical position, an organization need to have a healthy pool of candidates who are almost ready to take up that position. This process does not happen naturally. Some people are ambitious, they are more focused, and those people, irrespective of less effort of HR or the business partners, will be keep making themselves more and more prepared to take up the higher position. However, it is the role of HR, it is expectation of HR to make the succession planning as a structured process, as a making the succession planning a conscious process, wherein they constantly look out for the probable incumbents of the higher roles in organization, and that is done by looking at their current performance, their aptitude, their interest, and in light of the recommendation of the other business leaders and an employee supervisor. Forecasting is a process which decides, which help us to decide how many people have to be recruited and in what position they have to be recruited. So, now we will look at the forecasting tool of the personnel needs in organization, because forecasting gives us the true number of the people required to be recruited in a particular at a particular position. Forecasting tools in a conventional sense, in a rather simplistic sense, can be classified in terms of trend analysis, ratio analysis, and scatter plotting. Trend analysis means looking at the past data. For example, a hospital had 1000 customers per month, was having 100 beds and 50 nurses. If the trend shows that the number of patients per year is increasing by 20%, then simple calculation, following this simple calculation, the hospital may decide that since the increase general average increase of the patient is 20%, last year it was 1000, so this year we are going to have 1200. So, last year if we had 50 nurses, we need to recruit 20% more nurses, maybe 10 more nurses in the hospital. That is a simple trend analysis. Ratio analysis not only looks at the two trends, ratio analysis looks at the ratio of the different factors. So, the same hospital, if follows the ratio analysis, will look at what is the ratio with which number of nurses, number of doctors, number of other support staff, number of cleanliness staff, number of the office assistant grow or required to grow or have grown in last few years with respect to serving increasing number of patients. So, according to that ratio, they may find that patients might have gone with the percentage of 20, but the required staff has to grow with the administrative staff has to grow with the percentage of 10, maybe only 10% growth in the staff can handle the 20% of the growth in the patient, but probably nurses, the number of nurses has to be grown with the 15% or maybe 25%, because the complexity of the disease may increase. So, as a result of that, you may have to have more dedicated nurses for a particular ward, like that. So, different ratios are looked at and more informed decision is taken about who has to be recruited and how many people have to be recruited at a particular position. Then comes the scatter plotting, which is even more complex, wherein you consider multiple factors, and this plot is drawn between the output of the organization and the input which organization puts. They try to see the trend line, if it is linear, curvilinear, etc. So, they look at the association more closely, and accordingly organizations design the recruitment process and identify the targets for the recruitment. These are all traditional forecasting techniques. Even while listening to these, you might have recognized some of the drawbacks of these traditional forecasting techniques, like most of these projections are based on historical relationships. All of these factors, all of these techniques do not consider the impact of strategic initiatives on the future staffing. Suppose we are going to change the very nature of machinery being used for the operation, that may have a drastic impact on the number of people you require to employ. During the corona period, you might have observed that telemedicine has grown, and large number of doctors have started relying on the video conferencing for the normal day to day ailments, and they are providing consultancy over the video calls. That number has drastically increased. So, likewise there can be many strategic initiatives possible, and as a result of that we may not have a similar trend in terms of the requirement of the people at different workstations, at different jobs, at different functions within the organization. Most of these forecasting techniques, the traditional ones, support compensation plan that reward managers for managing ever larger staff. So, bigger the staff you have, you get more salary. This has been the tradition, but we can have a different tradition as well. We can decide to have a criteria wherein managerial output and staff, the ratio of the managerial output and staff will be calculated, and whosoever has the lowest ratio, staff versus output ratio, person will get the higher salary. Like these kind of association can be looked at, and that will help managers, that will provoke managers to think more innovative way of completing the processes with the same efficiency using lesser number of staff. They bake in the idea that staff increase are inevitable. So, the traditional forecasting techniques have this ingrained basic assumption that with time number of employees have to increase, but we know that that is not the reality, particularly when there are major technological changes happen, then the future trend just cannot tell what is going to be the future in terms of the number of employees required in a particular role. And a very common example can be given of the banks. You see in India, with the advent of the core banking solutions, number of employees required, particularly the number of the clerical employees required in a particular job has reduced drastically. So, the number of staff, number of the clerical staff required in the at the branch level or even at the corporate office level, regional office level has decreased with the increase in business and with increase in the number of account holders in banks. Of course, there has been the recruitment at some other function. For example, in the banks, particularly if you see in the private owned banks, they have to, thanks to the technology, they have to recruit lesser number of staff in the office for the operations, because technology takes care of major part of the operations, but they started hiring in a much large number employees responsible for sales and marketing, and that number is much lesser in the public sector banks. So, likewise we need to see what are the technological other economic factors or maybe regulatory factors will make the organizations to relook the trend of the business output and number of employees and their recruitment in the organization. They validate and institutionalize the present planning process and usual way of doing things, but we know that things can be done, and we are seeing in almost all the sectors. You can take quick examples are manufacturing sectors or telecom, where you see things are happening in very unusual way, in the ways which was not even thinkable 5 years ago. So, any technique which is based on the assumption that ways of doing things will be similar will not be, may not be very effective forecasting training. So, what are the more sophisticated ways of forecasting training? I can give one example of a public utility service company. This example is given in the Dassler and Bijou-Workey's book on the human resource management, which is being widely referred in these sessions. So, please help yourself, and after the lectures please also read the related chapters from any good HR human resource management textbook. We are, for the sake of uniformity, referring the Bijou-Workey's and Gary Dassler's book on human resource management published by Pearson publication, but these topics are common, and many of such examples and the description of the topic must be available in many other textbooks published by many other good publications, as good as Pearson is there. So, this example is taken from this book, which talks about a public utility service company which built a statistical model encompassing large number of variables. They looked at age, tenure, turnover rate, time to train new employee, the respective productivity of the employees, whole sets of data, and made the model which helped them to identify the 5 occupational hotspot. So, there were like 35 or more, it's more than 2 dozen, approximately 3 dozen occupational categories or groups were there in this organization. It's a huge organization, and out of that they recognized that 5 are the most crucial in terms of their impact on the value chain and the criticality and difficulty of recruiting people and training new recruits on those particular positions. So, they identified those 5 occupational groups, and the KRA of the HR department was given more weightage to constantly observe and maintain a healthy and appropriate recruitment process for these 5 hotspot occupational groups. That is possible with the thorough analysis and looking at the wide range of data, analyzing it and then seeing the pattern. So, from the trend analysis we need to look at the pattern analysis, environmental analysis. We need to look at how has been the pattern, because pattern can be looked at in context of large number of variables. So, when you look at the impact of large number of variables, it gives you the it does not, it may not give you the simple regression equation, it can give you a system dynamic model. In the system dynamic model, we can identify what are the most purposeful forces, what are the most critical forces which keep system to a certain level or which can take system to the next level. So, that systemic understanding is required for the HR planning to decipher the patterns and accordingly changing or modifying or setting the recruitment strategy. We also need to look at the environment, what is the regulatory environment, what are the new business opportunities coming up, what are the strategic plans. So, strategic growth, for example, is a major determinant of the recruitment process, and of course, the technology in the industry. So, looking at the pattern and the environmental factors, HR planning has to be done, and this is a field in itself. Actually, all the modules which we are studying are very integrate fields in themselves. So, if you find yourself interested to some of these specific modules, you can further build based on the readings in that particular function, maybe recruitment or performance management or training and development or career planning or employee engagement, etc. As the number of organization, as the size of organizations are growing, we have large number of multinational companies operating in India. According to one assessment, at least 5,000 multinational companies are operating in India, and India has produced large number of multinational company from its land. So, the area of operations and the scale of operations is increasing as the globalization is increasing, as the trade and economic activities are increasing. They have to be increased, that is the way they are designed, that is the way our system is. So, advantage, so each organization has to decide about whether they would like to have more centralized recruitment process or decentralized recruitment process. Both of the processes have the benefits. Centralized recruitment process strengthens the employment brand, means if the Google hires for worldwide, naturally it will ensure a kind of a brand equity, it will communicate certain values to the recruits, and recruits will also feel motivated to go through the process, even if they are eventually going to be employed, may not be in the headquarter, but may be in the regional offices. So, a central recruitment process also facilitate the strategic priorities, because the strategy happens at the centralized level, strategy happens at the global level. They have better picture about the strategic direction of the organization, and that can inform the recruitment process, which regional office may not have. It reduces the duplication of HR activities, because when the center is recruiting, then all the processes of testing or other structured recruitment processes can be reduced and can be done at a very good scale. We can achieve the economy of scale on these activities. It builds team of the HR experts. So, if in the central office recruitment team becomes specialized in the recruitment itself, because with sheer number of employees or the number of verticals they have to recruit, that may not be the case. The regional offices may not be recruiting, if they are given the opportunity, if they are given the authority, they may not be recruiting those many number of people. So, naturally a recruitment office located at the central or the global headquarter of the organization will have much wider experience of the recruitment, and then they will be more experts in that field. It provides the better measurement for the HR performance, because the overall HR function can be evaluated, the efficiency of the HR function can be evaluated. If we take the example of recruitment, then the turnaround time or the employee retention, these can be some of the indicators of the HR performance when we look at the centralized recruitment process. It allows for sharing of the applicant pool as well. When a centralized recruitment process is happening, large number of recruitment applications are received, and if the applications, some of the applications are not relevant for a particular job, then those applications can be forwarded to other regional offices where those particular roles are available, or other functions in the central office itself. So, having said that, we must recognize that recruitment yield follows a pyramidal pattern. What that means? It means number of people moving from one level of recruitment process to the next level keeps decreasing drastically. So, for example, lead generated, from the 6 leads generated for a particular position, generally one candidate is called for going through the process. Out of 4 candidates being invited for the process, generally 25% or 1 out of 4 drop, and 3 go through the process, the recruitment process. Similarly, out of 3 interviewed people, generally 2 are recommended to the next level, and out of those 2, 1 person is given the offer letter, and not everybody who gets the offer letter joins the job, joins the new organization. So, we must recognize that we need to have pool, we need to generate pool at every stage of the recruitment process. And as a result of that, we have now seen the outside sources of the candidates. Outside candidates, we all are aware, most of us are familiar to the internet as the most important recruitment mechanism, most important recruitment site are not the job agencies anymore, which used to be 20 years ago for the managerial jobs. Now it is now it is internet, largely it is through LinkedIn or other professional hiring sites. Employment agencies still have a role, but they have more crucial role in recruitment of very senior managers. Temporary agencies or alternative staffing are becoming more and more important in the gig economy. Gig economy is the one where you see major economic activity, but the people engaged in that economic activity cannot remain engaged for very long time. So, there is a need for the inflow of the new batches of the employees in those economic activities. For example, we have shared services of driving, Ola, Uber, etc. are the example, or the Zomato is another example of the shared aggregation based services. Zomato may go on for so many years, or Uber is there for so many years in the market, but number of people involved in large number of roles cannot remain in that role for very long time. So, they have to keep shifting to the new role, or they have to go out of the organization to take up different work. As a result of that, secondly, many industries go through the seasonality, and they need staff for a particular season in a year. So, for that there are agencies which enroll people in the who are available for the seasonal work, and they are connected to the prospective employers. Offshoring or outsourcing is again a very well known method of recruitment, where generally it is done for the technically expert manpower, and they are placed on the client sides to look after the system, in terms of maintenance or developing the software or developing other technical products and services on the client side. Similar to employment agencies, there are executive recruiters who not only provide the pool of the candidate, but they also help organizations for the first level of screening. On demand recruitment services are similar to the temporary agencies, but they provide the manpower for the recruitment at a very short stage, at very short span of time. So, they are on demand for a particular day you need a driver, or for few days you need a nurse at home. Like these kind of services are on demand services which are provided by these ODRS, on demand recruiting services. College recruiting, many of you who are taking this course must be college students, so must be aware of that campus placement process. In the small towns, for the more frontline roles, many organizations prefer pooling of the campuses to conduct the recruitment process, and for the management trainee roles, many organizations do not prefer pooling of the candidates. At the selection process, they go to different campuses and recruit for different roles. Referrals and walk-ins are becoming very popular. Referral particularly is extremely popular as a recruitment process. Many organizations in fact give financial incentives for the employees who refer good candidates which are eventually hired by organization. Outside source of candidates are also, there are some advantages of recruiting outside candidates. One advantage is that it is very cost effective. With a small effort you can develop a large pool of applicants, and you have applicants responding to your requirement almost immediately. We can do online pre-screening of the large number of candidates based on some quick test and can get the shortlisted candidates. It links to other job search sites. So, one organization need not to develop the whole pool, they can rely on many other job websites to develop the source of, to get the pool of the candidate to quickly shortlist them. The advantage is that disadvantage is that many of the recruits, many of the prospective candidates who are registered on the job sites might have forgotten or might not be interested in upgrading their profile. So, when you contact them, they either would have moved on from the role which is being shown in the job site, or they may not have that kind of inclination when they would have registered in the job site. So, that is a screening requirement. The screening requirement is major in the recruitment of the outside sources to the websites. In general as well, the screening of the candidate becomes very crucial and much more important in case of the outside sources. For the inside sources, we generally know who is good at what trade, whether the person has that competency or not, whether person is really keen and motivated to continue job in the organization. All these factors are very well known to the HR in case of the inside candidate, but for the outside candidate you need to find the ways to assess the competency, aptitude, interest, engagement, integrity, etc. So, there are benefits and advantages and disadvantages of recruiting outside as well as inside candidates. Most of these recruitment processes or recruitment activities require some trade off. So, in view of the position, the criticality of the position, the competency requirement of that position, and that we come to know through good job analysis. Based on those requirements, we can figure out what is the good method of recruitment of the candidate. Of course, we also need to look at the market condition and technology available, reliability and validity of the methods of assessment in case we are, particularly in case we are using the outside candidate pool. So, so many factors have to be considered before we decide upon the source of the candidate for recruitment. Advantage of the internal candidate is that they have the prior knowledge, and HR also has a prior knowledge of the strength and the weakness of the candidate. It has more accurate view. It increases the employee morale, particularly when people are promoted internally. It increases the morale of the other employees, because they see advantage, or they see the benefit of staying back with the organization with the hope of being promoted to the next level. Disadvantage is that failed applicants become discontented, because if internal candidate has applied and because of some reason the person is not able to make it to the position, the person become little disappointed, and with that disappointment person has to continue in the job. So, after disappointment comes the stage of after the disappointment person may also become disgruntled. So, that is the risk of not selecting the internal candidate, and that is the risk involved in using the internal candidate pool for the recruitment to the next level. Time wasted in the interviewing inside the candidate who will not be considered. So, that is true actually for the outside candidate as well, and many a time inbreeding is not good. If too much of internal hiring is done in an organization, organization may eventually left with the people having less of novel ideas, less number of people might be challenging the basic assumptions of the organization, less number of people might be challenging the supervisors to think out of the box and think about altogether new business plans or the business opportunities. All those things may suffer if there is too much of the internal candidates considered in the organization for promotion or for holding critical positions, and if they continue to hold the critical positions in the organization for a long time. Finding internal candidate has their own way. We can do it by job posting. So, it's an internal job posting, it's a kind of a internal advertising talking about the based on the job description and inviting the prospective candidates. Rehiring the former employees, that also can be a crucial thing, that is also considered internal candidate. There are benefits of rehiring the former employees, because we have fair idea about the competency of the person, integrity, etc. And the person in the meantime, when he was not with the organization, he was working outside of the organization, might have got the external exposure as well. So, with the most likely with the similar level of competency, you may get person with a bigger or broader perspective. So, rehiring can be useful in many roles in the organization, and then succession planning is a very common way of hiring from within. We have already discussed about succession planning in this session itself. It is about keeping the talent pool ready to hold and to take the next position whenever it arises. So, second component of today's session is about selection. Why careful selection of the recruits is so crucial? It is crucial, it is important, because appropriate selection determines the organizational performance. That is a obvious linkage. The non-obvious link is about the cost of the wrong hire. Cost of the wrong hire is not only about the money spent in the hiring or money spent in the person's recruitment process. The cost incurred is cost of the wrong hire is not only about the recruitment process, but also about organization's effort to train or retrain that person, and plus whenever the new hire and then there is a replacement cost as well, and that whenever a new recruit joins, it takes few days to at least few days to weeks and months to start performing at the level of average employee performing at that particular role. So, the cost of wrong hire is extremely high, the economic cost, and sometime if we do not hire the appropriate candidate, or if there is a wrong hiring, it may lead organization to legal obligations and legal liabilities. Selection process can be conducted using wide variety of devices. Most of them are basically tests. Some are the general mental ability test, some are related to personality test, some are related to the job performance related test, and each test has a different level of validity in terms of identifying the correlation, in terms of the strength of the correlation of performance of the people in that job with their scores in the test. So, this is the research by Carlson and colleague. They looked at various tests and identified the validity of those tests in predicting job performance, and you can see that general mental ability test found to have very high level of validity in comparison to personality test or the job knowledge in personality test or grade point average or rating of the training and experience, etc. So, looking at this table, you can see that general management ability test, work sample test, structured interview and job knowledge test are the most predictable methods of selection. There are less predictive methods of selection, predictive in terms of their capability to predict the job performance based on their performance in the test, rating of the training and experience, grade point average, biographical data is found to have lesser validity, lesser correlation with the job performance in future. We need to understand the basic testing concepts to understand the selection process. There are two most important criteria for basic testing concept. Test has to be reliable and it has to be valid. Reliable means it consistently scores obtained by the same person when the retested with the identical or equivalent test. So, our test result is stable over time when same candidate take it multiple times or when similar candidate take in different times or different locations. So, that is a reliability test. Validity test indicates whether the test is actually measuring what it is supposed to measure. So, for example, if test is about, if we have to test the general mental ability, logical ability, and if we give questions related to creative thinking, this will not be called a valid test, because it is supposed to measure mental ability or analytical abilities, and if the questions require some other ability, that test will be called invalid test. So, validity means this measures what it is supposed to measure. Major types of tests are basic skills test, job skills test, psychological test or personality test we say. Why we use test? Because it increased because with the increased job demand more testing is happening, because you want to be more and more confident whether the incumbent has the appropriate, suitable, desirable competency or not. Screening out the bad or dishonest employees, that is also one method, that is also a reason we have to use test in the selection process. It also reduces the turnover by personality profiling. Some of the jobs require some specific type of personality, and if it is found, if the association of certain type of personality being more suitable in particular type of job, if that assessment is clear, then it is very useful to conduct the personality profiling, and that can certainly help in reducing the turnover of the employees due to personality reasons. So, this slide shows the this slide discusses validity a little more in depth. Validity happens to be of three types: criteria validity, construct validity and content validity. What we initially mentioned, that test measuring what it is supposed to measure, is actually a construct validity. It is also important that test also has a criteria validity and the content validity. Criteria validity is the statistical relationship between scores on a selection procedure and job performance of sample or workers. So, we need to look at the scores of the recruits at the time of recruitment, track their job performance and look at the trend between the job performance and their scores. And if we consistently find that the job performance of the candidate who scored high marks or high assessment in some particular test, then we can say those tests are valid. Content validity is the selection procedure captures important aspect of the job performance. No job requires single competence. All the job, most of the jobs rather, require multiple aspects or multiple competencies. Whether our test is measuring more important competencies or fringe or peripheral competencies required in a particular job, that also needs to be checked. If in a particular job a technical competency is more crucial and interpersonal competency is less, may be useful, but may be less crucial, and if my test is mostly about the interpersonal communication, then certainly this test is missing the content validity. We also need to include something which tests the technical work of that involved in that in a particular job, We must follow some guidelines for testing programs. We need to use test as supplements. We always should use validated test. Monitoring of the selection process is very crucial. Without monitoring, people may fudge the data, they may take help of others, or they may not take the test seriously. Record keeping is very crucial to make the decisions in future, because to look at the trend or particularly to look at the validity, we need to have a large number of data. Means we need to have data from the multiple batches over the period of time, across the jobs, across the test. Until we have all those data, we cannot find the strong inference about the suitability of the test for that recruitment process. If you are using personality test, we must engage a trained psychologist. If they are also certified by the professional bodies, that is even better, but they must have got some training in the psychology. We need to recognize that people may perform significantly different on the same test depending on the condition of organization, condition of the surroundings when they are taking the test. So, conditions also must be managed. Different tests will require different conditions. For example, job sample test may require one type of conditions, personality test may require some other type of conditions. So, those conditions according to the test involved must be maintained, and we also need to revalidate the test periodically. A test may be valid for some point of time, for a particular generation, for a particular segment of the sociographic profile, but it may not be valid for some other segment of the employees, or may not be valid after a certain point of time. So, regular validation of the test also needs to be done.